What's up, my fellow comic book readers? Guys, we're 11 days away from my 1 year anniversary of reading comics, and tomorrow we start the number 10 on my list of my top 10 comics that I've read in the last year. But today, we're going to go over the honorable mentions, 11 through 25, okay? And this is in no particular order, so this isn't saying this one is number 11 or the last one is number 25. These are just the comics, the series that didn't crack my top 10. And comics that I've really loved, and I would still recommend them to everybody that's interested in these comics, all right? So in no particular order, Absolute Wonder Woman. Absolute Wonder Woman has been my number 2 Absolute series every single week. The number 1 has changed. Absolute Wonder Woman has been my number 1 for like a few issues, but it has never really moved out of my top 2. Maybe one issue at top 3, right? But it has just been so consistent at every turn. The art is beautiful, even though they changed artists, I believe. The writing has been fantastic. And I'm so interested in the story that is going on with Absolute Wonder Woman. And I definitely recommend it, whether you're an Absolute Wonder Woman fan or not. The whole Absolute universe is fantastic, but Absolute Wonder Woman has been one that stood out. Next up, we got the all-new Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider, all new Ghost Spider, Spider-Gwen. All three of those are hyphenated, so it's a cool little spin. But Stephanie Phillips has been killing it with those. I am really loving everything she's doing. I enjoyed the first 15 that I started at the beginning of my journey, and then I'm also enjoying the current run. I think is on issue 8 or 9. And Spider-Gwen is still trying to figure out life. In this last issue she just did, she was dealing with, breaking the unwritten rule of the superhero and killing somebody and how it made her feel. I'm still not fully convinced she killed the person. I think we're going to find out in the next issue that she didn't actually kill him. She was being convinced that she did just to take her out of the game. Anyways, fantastic. Next up, we got Captain America. Chip Zdarsky is taking over the Marvel Universe this year, from what I've heard. And what he's doing with Captain America, I still think it's funny. I read Captain America issue 1, and I was like, I don't think this is going to be for me. And I even talked about, maybe I'm going to drop Captain America. And everybody's like, no, keep it. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be good. And I'm so glad I did, because issue 2 through, I think, 8 has been just absolute top-notch Marvel writing. Chip Zdarsky is killing it with it, and I'm really loving that story that's going on right now. Next up, we got the first indie comic on the list, and there's a lot. You'll see there's a lot of indie comics on the list. This one is from Ignition Press. I've been hyping up Ignition Press a lot recently, but that's because they've been making such fantastic stories. And this is the initial Ignition Press comic that I read and fell in love with, Voyeur. It's about an art thief who kind of falls in love, I think. It hasn't been wrapped up yet, but I think he's fallen in love because, him and this woman have been together, doing things that people do in love, and trying to plot to steal some shit. So if you're into some love and crime thrillers and you're okay with a little bit of adult stuff, definitely check that out. Next up, and this is an oldie, so I know people are going to be like, this isn't a new comic book. Court of Owls. The Batman Court of Owls by Snyder was absolutely fantastic. It made me very interested in everything that was going on in the Batman universe, and I even started buying up Batman comics, although I haven't really got into them yet, but I have a bunch of Batman trades that I really want to start reading, and it was because of the Court of Owls. Batman was going through hell, and he was pulled down into dealing with his own subconscious, and just so much craziness going on. And then from what I understand, the Court of Owls is a huge part of the Batman lore, so I'm super excited to read more of that in the upcoming time. They Call Us Enemy. This was a 150-page trade. I guess trade. I don't think it was a trade. It was a one-shot, but it was more based off of reality. Of what was going on in the Japanese concentration camps in America. George Taki, who's famous in Star Trek. He's famous for being one of the first openly gay actors. But he was in Japanese concentration camp when he was way younger, and he was telling the story from his point of view and also from his parents' point of view. Because I think he was like 4 or 5, so he doesn't remember, 100%. But he was going off of like his point of view and his parents' point of view of what was going on in the Japanese concentration camps, and kind of telling a little bit of, of history, what was going on there and what people were going through, and a shout out to some of the people that were like helping, get books and, some food and stuff in there that weren't in there. And just like, I thought it was a fantastic story. I'm not really huge into history, although I am kind of very interested in history. The knowledge just kind of like, when I hear it, I love it, but like the going out of my way to read it is what draws me back. But George Takei did a really good job of telling his side of the story of what was going on in there, and his father's side of the story of what was going on in there. And I started reading it and I couldn't stop reading it. So if you're interested, They Call Us Enemy, fantastic read. Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu. Originally, when I made my top 10 list, Fist of Khonshu was my number 10 book, but it was replaced by something that you will find out tomorrow of what replaced Fist of Khonshu in my top 10. But Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu is probably one of my top 3 Marvel stories that I've read so far. Well, definitely is my top 3 of Marvel stories that I've read so far. I definitely recommend it to anybody who is interested in the Moon Knight series. It was a great read. Currently, we got Moon Knight, Mark Spector, and that's pretty solid so far. We're only on issue 2, and I haven't read issue 2, although I have it. It's just in my pile to read. But issue 1 was really fantastic. But another reason that Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu was in my top 10 is I really... it was my first time really connecting with somebody that is like not just a writer or artist in like a big franchise, but he's just a really cool ass person. So, shout out to Devmalia Promnik. He is the artist for most of the Fist of Khonshu and the current artist for Mark Spector. Just such a super cool dude. I actually went out and bought a bunch. I messaged him and I was like, yo, what would you recommend? So he gave me a list of 3 comics, and I went out and bought trades for all 3 of those that he did art for. So I still got to read some of those. I read one of them. I read Spider-Man 2099, and the art in that is fantastic as well. So yeah, definitely recommend Moon Knight, Fist of Khonshu. Next up, we got Crownsville. I just read Crownsville. Is a story kind of like a little bit of fact about history in there. A lot of fact about history, but mixed in with a little bit of fiction. So a all black insane asylum pretty much was being experimented on, and kids were being kidnapped off the streets and sent there. Again, all black kids were being sent there and being experimented on to be turned into weapons for the U.S. military. And then a detective and a journalist go in there and find out what happened, because the journalist's mom on her deathbed was like, you got to go and you got to go and do something about this so that I can get into the heaven, because I've been living with this guilt all of my life. So great read. I recommend that book to everybody. That's probably I don't want to say that's probably my number 12, because there's so many great books on this list, but Crownsville, fantastic read. It's only a 5-issue series from Oni Press, and I definitely recommend that to everybody. Next up, we got Godzilla Escape the Dead Zone. I always say in all my videos that I review it, or on my Wednesday New Comic Book Day hauls, IDW, Godzilla, Kaizea era. If you see those 3 things on a comic book, you got to pick them up. There's Escape the Dead Zone, there's Godzilla, and there's Starship Godzilla. And all 3 of them are fantastic. They're just different spins on Godzilla and, what's happened in the United States after the Godzilla attacks. So if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend all 3 of them. But Escape from the Dead Zone is my favorite of the 3. Next up, we got Cul-de-sac by Bad Idea. Cul-de-sac was a different spin on vampires. There's a super race of vampires that can go out in the dark, or they can go out in the daytime. They're not allergic to silver. They're not there's none of that shit that affects vampires, and they can actually feed off vampires. They have super strength over vampires, and just it was a spin on that about a group of kids that just found out they were the vampires, the super race of vampires, and the other vampires and humans are trying to kill them. So I definitely recommend that, especially if you're a vampire fan and just kind of tired of the same old trope. It's a very different take on vampires that's fantastic. And it's only 6 issues, so short read. Next up, we got Kick-Ass, which I know is an older one, but I got the I think it's the Kick-Ass 1, because I think there's Kick-Ass 1, 2, and 3. I haven't read 2 and 3. Kick-Ass 1, fantastic comic. I think I liked the comic more than I liked the movie, and I actually heard several people say they liked the movie more than they liked the comic. But I thought it was a fantastic take about a kid who wants to be a superhero, but he just keeps getting his ass kicked, and then he gets like metal plates put in his body so that he can take an ass kicking. And then like it's so super gory. Like there's just blood and guts everywhere. So if you're interested in that, if you've ever watched a movie and you're interested, like I wonder where it came from, read the comics. Fantastic reads. Next up, we got The Moon is Following Us, which was kind of like one of my first introductions into Image. And it was my first introduction to Daniel Warren Johnson. DWJ has been phenomenal in everything that I've read from his. And now he's not now, I'm sure he's been doing it for a while, but he's been doing covers also. Like the art on the covers is fantastic, but DWJ does a lot of, he does the writing and the art for his books, and then Mike Spicer, I think is the name. I think I'm not messing it up. Mike Spicer has been doing the coloring for all those, and it's been fantastic. So I definitely recommend, if you're looking for a comic book to get into for Daniel Warren Johnson, because you've heard all the hype, and you want a good, a good tearjerker, The Moon is Following Us. It's about a dad who loses his daughter and goes into like this fantasy world to get his daughter back. Fantastic read. Not just a dad. It's a mom and dad that go back in time. But I'm a dad, so I related from the dad side. Next up, we have Rook Exodus, okay? And I hype up, and I have another Ghost. Oh my God. Anyways, the publishing company, they fall under Image. And they... it's really bothering me that I'm having a brain fart right now. But they are the company that produces a series of books, and I have one of their books in my top 10, 2 of their books in my top 10, and I have these 2 books in my honorable mentions. So Ghost Machine, Jesus, Ghost Machine, Rook Exodus is just a phenomenal story. It probably would have been a little bit higher if there would have been more of them, but I think issue 7 or issue 8 just came out. I read 7. I think 8 is in my to be read pile, but it's about, the world ended and humans sent off to different worlds, and on the world that they're on Exodus, or Rook. Anyways, the planet they're on, there are people that have these helmets that give them powers to communicate and control. They kind of take over the alpha role of certain animals. And Rook is, he is in charge of the crows, but he's like the main character. And the planet is dying, and they're trying to save the planet. All the humans have already been evacuated off this planet as well. And the people that were left there are kind of trying to make it work. But excellent freaking story. Excellent. It might be in other people's top 10. Fantastic story. And then Hyde Street, probably one of my very few horror comics that I've actually really gotten into. But Hyde Street, and there's several spin-offs. You have Devour, and then you have Sisterhood, that both came off of Hyde Street as well. But if you are interested in horror and you haven't read Hyde Street yet, I am telling you, you are missing out on gold. It is fantastic. It's kind of about a street that kind of just appears when people are they haven't died, but they're kind of they just happen to venture down limbo. And there's different people that, have kind of they did die, and they've decided, instead of going to hell or purgatory, they go to this place where they have to get 10,000 souls, and give them to this guy in order for a second chance at life. And it's just so fantastic. Pranky is the dude in there. If you've read it, if you haven't read it, Pranky. And then last but not least, like I said, these were done in no particular order. Feral. Feral is by Fleeks, Tony Fleeks. And he's done a couple of books that I've really liked. And unfortunately, he did have a book that I mentioned yesterday, The Thing, that was on my DNF list. But that's not a hit on Fleeks. Again, not everything isn't for everybody. Feral is for me, and I definitely recommend it to anybody that's interested in animals, but specifically cats. It's about a group of cats that there's a rabies outbreak, and it's kind of like a zombie outbreak for animals, and they've evacuated the city because it's real bad, and everybody was told they couldn't bring their pets. They had to take them to the local place and have them put down, and the people that were really lovers of their pets didn't do that. They left their cats and dogs and other animals out in the wild to have a chance at survival. And this follows a group of cats that are surviving the zombie apocalypse, and they're just going through so much craziness. I'm a couple issues behind on it, but everything I've read up to like issue 20 has been just absolute fire so far, and I definitely recommend it. But guys, that is my list of honorable mentions. Tomorrow, we start my top 10. What do you guys, after listening to my honorable mentions, and you've heard, if you watched my reviews, I know a lot of people watch and have watched a lot of my reviews, and I love you guys for that. Guys and gals, I love y'all for that. What do you think my number 10 is? If you had to guess, what do you think I would remove Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu for? I'm interested in seeing what you guys can guess is my number 10. And who knows, maybe I'll like give away something if somebody actually guesses it. That would be interesting, right? But guys, I love y'all. Appreciate y'all for being here. If y'all sat through the whole freaking video, really appreciate you. But come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a short. So if you are on another platform other than TikTok, if you're on YouTube, check out for my shorts because it's going to be less than 3 minutes. But we're going to go the next 10 days. We're going to climb up from number 10 up to my number 1. A lot of you people can probably guess what my number 1 is. It's pretty predictable if you know me. But anyways, guys, love y'all, appreciate y'all. And if you do nothing else today, pick up something, read it, stimulate the mind, and have a great day.